It's Kelly from Appalachian Memory Keepers, and recently we released part 1 of an incredible interview we did with an inspiring lady from Alleghany County, North Carolina named Charity Gambill. She was one of the best interviews that we've ever done for Appalachian Memory Keepers, and today we're excited to bring you part 2. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss any of our videos. If you did miss part 1 of this interview with Charity Gambill, we will put the link in the description below. For everybody at Appalachian Memory Keepers, thank you for your support.
You said something about Troutman, the
shirt company.
Shirt factory.
Yes.
And what that experience was like, because it was an integrated shop, more or less.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, when I first went to work there, of course, that was my first really paying job. I drove school bus, go back in several years. Back in 1960, when there was the heaviest snow, 1958, 59, and 60, 61, I drove school bus. Back then, I found some old check stubs. It was $24 a month. That's what I made driving the school bus. But then back in the mid-60s, probably 66, 67, I went to work at Troutman Shirt Company. And boy, you talk about, I think I was making 75 cents an hour. Big money. I mean, that was big money. Going in there, of course, I knew a lot of the people that I went to work with. And a lot of the time at break, we would get in a discussion about why did it take so long for you to, and I said, we couldn't come to work because we didn't think, we literally until segregation and all this stuff, until the integrated things, we just wasn't being hired in those factories. But the relationship with the folks that I worked with, some had some problems with it, and you knew who you could, but it didn't take them long to come around, and I had a very good working relationship with the folks that I worked with. Like I say, I felt like I was a hard worker, doing a good job. And it helped a whole lot knowing my supervisor, because she was one of the folks that used to give Mama clothes, help Mama with us kids when we were young, small. So it was a great experience starting out there, and sort of got my feet wet. But like I said, I didn't want to be in a sewing factory the rest of my life, but it certainly opened doors for me.
Yeah. Situation that you grew up in, and it's not idyllic, it's not perfect, and I'm not talking about the poor part, because there were that sort of everybody was in that boat.
Yeah.
But they would say, well, you didn't get the opportunities here that maybe we got in a more urban place or in a different place in the country, and how can you be so positive? How can you be so embracing and loving to a place where it wasn't, I guess, as perfect as it could have been? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, like I say, I'm the only one of 7 children that stayed in Sparta. And what I tell people is, I had opportunities to leave too, but I chose to live in Sparta. This was where I was born, it's where I was raised, it's where I had connections, and my mother and I, we loved this. We was out here for years. It was just me and her after all my kids left home. And there may have been other opportunities, but I felt like that with my mother being here, she needed me. I needed her. And as long as she lived, I had no intentions of leaving. And by the time, I mean, she, like I say, she lived to be 88-year-old. Died in 2007. Well, I got married in September 2007. So now if they take me away from here, it'll be in a box. I guess you just sort of get older and set in your ways. And like I say, I'm a country girl. I love the mountains. I love the freedom. I feel free. I feel free here in these, out in the country, and being able to do the things that I've always loved to do.
Yeah. One of the recurrent themes that we've really touched on in a lot of these interviews in Alleghany County is around the subject of music and about the role the music played. Musical families,
Whether
tended
in the
to,
house or in churches or
how did music how did it intertwine with you as in your life growing up?
Well, back growing up, there used to be a radio station, Ernie's Record Mart from Nashville, Tennessee. My daddy liked the Grand Ole Opry. Now he was really he liked Grand Ole Opry, flatfoot dancing, and all that stuff. He used to clown around a lot with that. But my sister and I, we liked rhythm and blues. Rhythm and blues is what they called it back then. And we would listen to Ernie's Record Mart in Nashville, Tennessee on Saturday night after Bill and Charlie Monroe went off. Oh, Daddy would let us have the radio and keep it on for an hour, 1 hour. And so we grew up on rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and of course gospel music has always been near and dear. Really can't carry a tune in a bucket, but I sing with the choir. And I told somebody, I said, I sing so low. So low nobody can hear me, but I sing with the choir. And love good gospel music. Love it. Some of my favorite songs, Amazing Grace and Pass Me Not and I'll Fly Away and all these things. Just music has always been very inspirational to me. I have a love for music. We communicated. Back in the day, I used to hear where that's how slaves communicated, was through their music. If they wanted to do something, they communicated through music. And so that's sort of rooted and grounded in us as African Americans. And like I say, I love good gospel music. A lot of times my husband and I'll have it so loud you'd think both of us was deaf, but we do like our good gospel music. And
so what was the social scene like? What was I love the term courting because I think that's a lost art. But
yeah, my dad, he, number one, we couldn't go out on a date by ourselves. Both of us had to go. So the guy that I liked, my dad didn't like him. And so one day my sister's boyfriend came and Daddy said, well, the only way she could go was I could go with them. So he let me go. Well, little did he know is the guy that I liked had crawled in the trunk of the car, and he was in the trunk. Well, Dad decides, well, I'll just go with you all on this date. He said, we'll go to town. We'll just go into town and buy some hot dogs and come back to the house and have a weenie roast. Oh, we just panicked because here Rufus was in the trunk of the car. And what was we going to do? Well, when we got into Sparta, there used to be a beer joint, Judy's Beer Joint. Daddy said, I'm going to run in here and get me a cold one, he said. So while he was in there, my sister's boyfriend opened the trunk and let Rufus out, the guy that I was supposed to be dating. Well, it just so happened that there was a bus station in town at that time. And Rufus, Daddy thought was in West Virginia. It's where he went to school. And he had come, Rufus, quick thinking, come walking across. He had ran across the street when Daddy went in the beer joint. He come walking across the street, and Daddy walked. Hey, how you doing, buddy? How you doing? He said, we just come to town to get us a few hot dogs, and we're going back home to have a weenie roast. I said, won't you just go with us? With oh, thank the Lord, you know. He didn't see him, but we just was not allowed to go. If we went out, we didn't go night dating. Saturday afternoon matinee at the theater was about as far as we could go by ourselves. And if we wanted friends to come to see us, you stayed at the house, basically sitting in the front room with Mom and Dad. And when Daddy got a little restless, they knew it was time to go.
I like that idea.
I do.
I'm really okay with that.
So, but it was funny. He was very comical when it come to, especially the girls. He was very overly protective, and he did think he could choose who he had his choices, but he and him and Rufus, the guy that he ended up, that's who I married, and him and Daddy ended up being best friends. I mean, Daddy loved him, but when we first started dating, Daddy couldn't stand him. A little mean rascal. He didn't trust him, and he just had all kind of pet names for him. But they ended up being best friends.
I think that's probably par for the course right there.
And I told my kids, I said, now I could be like your grandpa was about your dating, but honestly, my girls, neither one of them dated till they went away to college. So it was.
Saved you a lot of grief right
Oh
there.
yeah.
They were focused on what they need to be focused on.
Yes.
What do your grandkids think about you living up here in the mountains? They come up to see Grandma.
Yeah, they do.
I think this is Siberia.
Yeah, they said, Grandma, what do you do for entertainment? I said, well, we mow the grass, we work in the garden. I crochet. I do a lot of crocheting in the wintertime. I don't do much in the summertime because I just can't fool with the yarn. But we visit with them. But they love to come up here and the outdoors because they don't have large spaces to play in. Of course,
We've been going a long time, but just one more topic.
Yes.
I'd like to talk a little bit. One of our shows we want to do, we found a lot of people, especially kids, don't realize now, we're calling it the migration. And it happened a lot during the 30s and 40s when there was no work here. And so many people from Alleghany and Sparta went to Maryland,
West Virginia, coal mines.
Went to and trying to find work, and we've heard so many stories where they'd get homesick and they just had to come back, and they'd come back maybe for 6 months and no money, go back and get work in like the Beta Shoe Factory we hear everybody talk about, or Pennsylvania or wherever. What is the African American perspective on that? Because I would think it'd been the same thing, and you talk about how you're the only one now to talk about that migration, that that flow in and out.
Well, now with my family, I can go back a little bit farther because I know my dad's brother went in worked in the coal mines in West Virginia. A lot of the African Americans or blacks from this area, that's where they went, was to the coal mines in West Virginia. Made good money, apparently, there, because I know my first husband, his father lived in West Virginia, and that's where Rufus finished high school, was in West Virginia. When it got, and I know my mother's siblings, a lot of them moved away to Philadelphia. They worked in iron factories and tire places, a lot of places like that. When my family, the reason so many of them left home was because opportunities for work. They got their education, but there wasn't jobs here for them. Now my brother, one of my brothers, he worked at the shoe factory here for years, and then he went and he was in the military, went to Vietnam, and then he moved to Winston-Salem and went to work for Duke Power, running heavy equipment. She moved to Winston-Salem and went to work for R.J. Reynolds and worked there for many, many years. I mean, it's just that the job opportunities, they had to move away. And that's what happened with my children. When they got through college, there wasn't jobs in their fields for them to go to work. So wherever my oldest daughter, she lives in Charlotte. She ended up being manager of a Circuit City store, but after she couldn't have children, she adopted children, and once she got the kids, she didn't work anyway. She just wanted to stay at home with them until she did some substitute teaching and stuff. But the job opportunities were not here. And that's the situation for a lot of our young people. It didn't have to just be our black kids. It was for all young people. Unless they wanted to teach, there was nothing for them here in Alleghany.
Well, you think about the agrarian economy, about farming, and about if you have 7 kids,
Uh-huh.
you can't support 7 more families off of one farm. So
No.
something's got to give.
Yeah, and see, the farming industry it's a lost art now. I mean, we have Christmas tree farms and we have small tobacco farming, and most of it is the dairy farms, what used to be a big thing in Alleghany County. I don't know if we've got 3 left in the county or not. Very few, if any. We have a lot of cattle farmers, but jobs, like I say, if you don't teach, it's just hard to get a good, and teachers are underpaid, to tell you the truth, and have been for years. I've always said that's probably one of the hardest things anybody could do. I don't envy teachers. I admire them immensely for the job they do and the patience they have.
Did those folks that you mentioned who moved away to Philly and to the coal mines, and I assume like around Bluefield, West Virginia,
Yeah.
and north of that,
Yeah.
did they come back and forth a lot, or did they just stay?
Well, they didn't come back and forth. They basically, some of them had families, and they may come back once a month if their families were still here. A lot of them moved their families to West Virginia, the ones that were in the mines and stuff. They moved their families to West Virginia with them, and they was in Bluefield was one, but most of the folks I knew was in Gary, West Virginia, Anawalt, West Virginia, some way back up in the mountain, coal miners. Because I thought where we lived was remote, until I went to West Virginia, and I thought, oh my God, there's no way in the world I could live out there. But my dad's brother and my aunt lived there for years until he died. And then my uncle, my mother's brothers, they all moved to Philly. And and they didn't come back. Of course, they raised their families there. In fact, we went up there for a wedding 3 weeks ago. My first cousin's son got married.
Do you ever see any of those folks who want to, or do they ever come back to Alleghany County looking for their roots, looking for that?
Yes.
So,
and, it's unfortunate that I told them when my mom died, there went a wealth of knowledge because we let a lot of the old folks get away, and we didn't have a whole lot written down. And right now, me and Juanita Bryan, we talk back and forth about, we're probably getting close to being the oldest ones. We're not actually the oldest, but as far as memories are concerned, we're the ones that has a lot of the knowledge of some of the things that went on back as the kids would say, back in the day.
What'd you do for fun as a kid?
On Sundays, we would get together and play ball all day on Sundays when the weather was warm enough. And we was the only black family, like I told you, within the closest black family was 2 miles, and there was elderly folks. It was my dad's great uncle. But we would gather on Sunday and we would play ball all day long in one of our neighbors' meadows. Uh, we didn't have, most of the time we didn't have a ball to play with, so we'd make us a ball out of socks, and sometimes we'd stick a little rock in there to make it heavy and carry farther. But that's what we did for entertainment. Now, we used to shoot marbles. We played shoot marbles, pitched horseshoe. We'd have real horseshoes. I mean, you'd take, after the horses about wore them out, you could have them and we'd play shoot. And we would have, we raised chickens and being out in the country like that, all those little chickens didn't live, so we'd have funerals. And we'd bury those chickens in our sand. We had a sand dune up above our house. We'd bury the chickens, and my cousin would stay with us during the summertime. And my oldest brother, he was the preacher. My cousin was the undertaker. My sister and I, we were the mourners. Well, we'd cry, and we'd bring dandelions was our flowers that we decorated with. We'd decorate their graves, and we'd just march around, and the poor chicken, it was, and then they got the place the chickens quit dying, and every once in a while we'd just have to kill us one. And Mama, my sister, got upset with me, and she told Mama what I'd done. I'd killed a chicken. I was killing those chickens, and that sort of broke that game up. But we were sort of growing out of that anyway. But those were the kind of things when you lived out in the country, and you found things to do to entertain yourself. We made playhouses. Our neighbors, our white girlfriends, friends that was there, we had a pine grove, and we built us a playhouse. We'd rake up pine needles, and we would slip real dishes and stuff out of her grandma's house and our house, and we had the nicest playhouse you've ever seen. And they'd have to holler for us at dark to come home because we'd stay out that late. We'd call ourselves cooking stuff. We wouldn't be able to dig up worms or anything and have dead to act like we was cooking and stuff. But we never got brave enough to build a fire or anything, but we certainly, those were the things we did for entertainment. And we used to catch crawfish, and they told us that there's a pearl in crawfish. Of course, we'd get them and crack them open, and sometimes you'd find those white things. I don't know if it was a pearl or not, but that's what they told us. But there's just a lot of, those were things we did for entertainment. We jumped rope. We'd have old farm rope. We didn't have skipping ropes like they got today, modern things. And Daddy made us sleds. I mean, the sled probably weighed 40 pounds, but that's what we had. And he'd put a old tire runner on it so it'd be slick. He made us wagons. We used to, and this wasn't really entertainment, this was work, but in the wintertime we had to saw our wood. We had cross-cut saws that you used. You didn't have chainsaws. We didn't know what a chainsaw was. And but you had to get your kindling, they called it, to build a fire with, and then you had to have some bigger wood. So, those were some of the things we did.
What about food? What's your, thinking back as a kid, what were meals like? What was it?
Oh, Lord.
What was your favorite meal?
Pinto beans, cornbread, onion, and we always thought we had to have meat. So, and I'll tell you how we were. We I told you we raised our own hogs and had all that. Well, we actually didn't have beef ourselves, but Mr. Edwards, Mr. Dillon, that Daddy did the farming for, they'd kill a beef, and that's when they'd always share with us. They'd give Daddy beef and hamburger, and so we would have but pinto beans cooked in a ham hock and potatoes. Now, Mama would say, well, we'll have taters and beans tonight and beans and taters the next night. So we eat potatoes every way you could fix them. And cornbread, and she was a baker. She'd bake some of the best homemade, just from scratch cakes. And of course in the summertime we had garden stuff. We had peas and new potatoes, and you had greens and lettuce and onions and green beans, and those are the things, and that's what I still like to do, you know. But Lord, we was raised on pinto beans and potatoes. That's something we had plenty of.
It's interesting you say that about beef. We've had a lot of people say they didn't eat beef as a kid.
No, we didn't have it.
One person said the only time we ever got beef was when we would go into town and get a hamburger at Smithy's. Was a huge treat. If
Oh,
we got to do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
You know,
it was.
The only beef they had.
Yeah.
A lot of pork and chicken.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we had plenty of chicken. In fact, I've seen Mama snap a chicken's head, and you used to pick them. You know, you had to put them in hot water and pick the feathers off. That was, my kids can't believe that either, but I've seen her do it more than one time. And take an axe and cut their head off, and the chicken jump and jump and jump and jump. And she'd have us out there trying to flag it down. She'd say, grab the chicken, it's got to get in hot water right now so you can pick it for the... And country ham, Lord, Daddy used to sell the best, what we thought was the best part of the hog, but that's how you got our Christmas stuff. He would sell country hams, and he'd always try to get us at least one toy apiece. I'll never forget my first doll. And he'd keep a shoulder then for us to have for. And then after several years, he would keep a ham and have it cut up, and we'd take country ham biscuits to school, and because we wasn't used to having, we called loaf bread, light bread back then, and we'd see some of the kids with light bread and bologna sandwiches, and we would swap our ham biscuits for them at city. We call that city bread. Not knowing they was getting the best deal. But,
great story. Swapping your
City bread.
Swapping your biscuit and then good old country ham for bologna.
Oh my.
yeah, we couldn't get it.
It was different.
Yeah, it was. It was just a whole new ball game for us. So
Did you know? It seems like each of these little mountain communities have a small African American community.
yeah,
Like Ashe County had.
yeah.
And still has one.
Uh-huh.
Is there any communication between?
Very little, and it wouldn't have. And the reason is there was as much as there was when we started going to school. We sort of met up with kids that, you know, like I said, where we lived, the closest family was 2 miles, and it was an older couple. The closest family with children, black families, was 15 miles maybe. We didn't get to see them unless we went to church, and that's all the time we get to see them, unless we saw the kids in school. We met a lot of kids in school that, you know, we wouldn't have met otherwise living down there where we were at, because we were black kids raised up in a community where there was only whites, and we played together. We did everything together, and we didn't see color. We did not see color even back then. And of course, you know, there was name calling and that kind of stuff. But we used to laugh about it because we didn't know what they was talking about. If they called us the N-word, we called them the N-word back because we didn't know. That's what we did. I mean, we just thought it was funny. If they could say it in life, we could say it in life back. So that's what we did. as you got older, Mama tried to tell us, that's something you don't say. Some things you just don't say. But we didn't, and I guess I never have really. I knew there was discrimination, and there will be as long as there's still some, but it's so isolated in areas that. But you just don't know sometimes when you got new people moving in how they was brought up or what their culture was, and so the environment they was raised in. But I know how I was raised, and then like I said, we were always taught be kind to people, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And Daddy used to get up on us and said, but you do it first or something. And he'd say, that's not the way, that's not what the Bible said. Do unto others as you have them do unto you. So that's the way we're brought up.